expressions of sympathy for our late and distinguished colleague, Professor Brian Hillery. And before calling on the Taoiseach, I want to welcome to the House Mrs. Miriam Hillery, her son Conor, her son Eugene, daughter Cleanna, Brian Patrick Hillery, Gavin Hillery, Joan Hillery, Tommy Hillery, Éireann Hillery Nolan, Nisha Hillery Nolan, Cameron Hillery Nolan, Hannah Hillery and Benjamin Hillery, Deirdre Hillery, Mark Nolan and James Hillery. It's fantastic to have so many members of such a distinguished family with us here today. Thank you for joining us. Taoiseach.
Agus is léir gur cailúnt olmhór de haglach agus dá cháirde agus a lucht ahantais bríon ó thuilethe. Tír ghra hóir le tiomantas agus passion dá hir. Pálatóir den chéad sco a bathe a hiag daoine timpeall go riomha. Bhí sé úil, macánta agus ceann rodíoch ina smaointe. Fear gnó éifeachtach agus rathúil a bhí ann, a hiag gnó ag le bhéal idirnáisiúnta agus mar olamh ach a dúil ollscoile thug sé tróir úntach agus spreaga dá bhic léinn. Ceann Comhairle and colleagues, it is an honour for me as Taoiseach to have the chance to reflect on the life of our late colleague Brian Hillery. Brian passed away surrounded by his family on the 19th of January 2021. When the Irish Times published his obituary, it did so under the headline, "One of the great gentlemen of Irish politics." It was a brilliantly accurate description of the man. His particular mix of personal qualities brought him successful careers in academia, business and politics. Brian and I were both elected to the Dáil for the first time in 1989, and we were good personal friends. We were from different generations, but we enjoyed our friendship nonetheless. By the time he was elected, he had already had more than a decade of national political experience as a senator, had secured an MBA in the United States, a PhD from UCD, had served as the first professor of industrial relations at UCD, and a visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley, to just name a few of his achievements. But he carried all of this very lightly and was always a very charming, warm and engaging colleague. During some turbulent times within the party, Brian was always a rock of sense, never allowing the political battles injure personal relationships. He was always someone who could see and understand the bigger picture. As a result, he was in much demand. Appointed to Taoiseach by Taoiseach Albert Reynolds in 1992, he left politics in 1994 to become a director of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in London. A series of important directorships and chairman roles followed that, including the Central Bank of Ireland, the National Pensions Reserve Fund Commission and Independent News and Media. He was, in short, a very accomplished man. But he was also, first and foremost, a committed family man. He was born and raised in County Clare, and it was there that he first met Miriam. They married in 1970, and throughout their life together, she was his closest and most trusted advisor. They were true partners. They had 5 children together, daughter Cleanna, sons Conor, Eugene, Brian and Gavin. And to all their grandchildren, I know that each of you are very proud of your father's successes, but also, and probably more importantly, I know you are proud of the enormous and genuine respect and affection that he inspired in everyone he worked with. To you, Miriam, to Cleanna, Conor, Eugene, Brian and Gavin in particular, your husband and father was indeed a great gentleman. I feel lucky to have known and worked with him, and so do we all. Ar yeiste go raibh anam ílis.
Rose Conway-Walsh, please.
Ceann Comhairle and fáilte to all of the Hillery family. I'm not going to attempt to name everybody out. Professor Brian Hillery made a significant contribution to public life in Ireland. He did so not only in politics, as the Taoiseach said, but also in spheres of economics, business and academia. And following his passing in January 2021, President Higgins paid tribute to Professor Hillery, saying, "Those who served with him in the Oireachtas will remember Brian as always courteous and as a warm and intelligent man." Indeed, the common threads woven through Professor Hillery's life are the threads of integrity, thoughtfulness and a natural courtesy for people. He matched high achievement with admirable personal qualities, qualities which were recognised and appreciated by those of all political persuasions. A native of Milltown, Malbay in County Clare, Professor Hillery was born into a household of strong Fianna Fáil tradition. His cousin Patrick served as President of Ireland from 1976 to 1990, and he excelled as an academic, graduating from UCD with a Bachelor of Commerce, later achieving an MA at the University of Georgia, as you said, before returning to complete a doctorate in UCD. He would later be appointed to the staff at UCD, where he went on to become the university's first Professor of Industrial Relations. Following the general election of 1977, he was elected as a Fianna Fáil senator to the Seanad on the administrative panel. He went on to serve 2 subsequent terms in the Seanad, as well as winning a seat in the Dáil in the constituency of Dunleary in the 1987 general election. Professor Hillery was also known for his principled opposition to the leadership of Charlie Haughey. However, his fair, polite and civil nature, and indeed his desire to be a calming influence, saw him navigate the choppy waters of the internal party strife. And despite his genuine sympathy for Des O'Malley following his expulsion from the party, Professor Hillery chose to stay within the ranks of Fianna Fáil rather than to join with Mr O'Malley in the Progressive Democrats. It's a testament to his integrity and honour and his standing amongst his party colleagues that he did so while maintaining his position on the leadership. Outside of the world of politics, Professor Hillery made notable contributions in the areas of administration, finance, economic, industrial relations, and he played a key role in trying to broker resolutions to significant industrial disputes during the 1970s, where he was remembered for adopting a conciliatory, calm and pragmatic approach. Professor Hillery also held several successful roles and positions in the private sector, including in the areas of media, finance and banking. And following his departure from national politics, Professor Hillery was appointed as the Executive Director of the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development in 1994 until 1997. In a rapidly changing world, it was a role he took very serious and where he commanded sincere respect for his diligent work. He also served on a number of bodies advising the government in the areas of public sector pay, pensions and education, and he later became the director of the Central Bank and of the Financial Regulator. Those who knew Professor Hillery well repeatedly cite their admiration for his warmth, his decency, his intellect and the importance he placed on serving the public interest. It is right that we as the Dáil recognise his work, his achievements, his life, and I want to express my sincere condolences on behalf of Sinn Féin to his wife Miriam, to his children Cleena, Connor, Eugene, Brian and Gavin, and to his extended families and wide circle of friends, and to his colleagues in the Fianna Fáil party and all those who loved him. Aresh Jay Gorawan Anam Jeelish.
Thank you very much, Deputy Conway Walsh. Deputy Bernard Durkin on behalf of Fine Gael.
In fact, Ceann Comhairle, just on behalf of Fine Gael and Dunleary, I'd just like to offer my condolences to the family on behalf of Fine Gael and Dunleary, but my colleague Bernard Durkin, who of course was a member of the Oireachtas at the same time as Professor Hillery, would like to speak on behalf of Fine Gael.
Very much, Deputy Carmack.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Yes, indeed, any accolade going his way is well deserved. He was really a nice guy, a nice man. I think the best thing that can be said about a politician in the modern era. He took his job seriously, he generated respect, and he was respected. I think that's the hallmark of his membership of the Houses of the Oireachtas, where he left that indelible mark. To be able to speak frequently and well and strongly in support of the views he held, but at the same time to be able to listen to what the other side had to say and to be able to respond in an amicable fashion when so required. Yes, J. Go Rao Anam.
Thank you, deputies. Now, Deputy Éireann on behalf of the Labour Party.
Our son Farty no Gaibre Kermit our Covro no Cree Nul the Winter Earhachta Hillery. My sympathies and those of my Labour Party colleagues are with the family of former TD and Senator Brian Hillery, who died last January 2021. I know from conversations with members of this House in Fianna Fáil that the news of his death brought much sadness to all those who knew him over his long years of public service. Mr Hillery began his political career in the Seanad, and there he served for many years until contesting and winning a seat in the Dunleary constituency. It is clear that those who served with Mr Hillery in the Oireachtas remember him as a courteous and intelligent man. The former Labour leader Eamon Gilmore was elected to Dáil for the Dunleary constituency for the first time on the same day as Mr Hillery in the 1989 general election, I understand. In his words of commemoration, he described the late Mr Hillery as a gentleman. Accounts I have heard from those who knew him personally demonstrate that this was an accurate descriptor. As well as serving as a senator and as a TD, Mr Hillery was successful in several other fields. As an academic, he was the first Professor of Industrial Relations at UCD. He also served as Ireland's representative on the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as Director at the Central Bank and as a financial regulator. It was a career filled with accomplishments. He'll be missed very much by family, friends and former colleagues alike. I note that his death occurred during a very challenging time for the state, as grieving families were asked to continue to comply with COVID-19 restrictions and to cope with their bereavement in a very different way. Following the opening up of society last year, I do hope that Mr Hillary's family have been able to mark his impressive life in a way that helps them to heal. I further hope that the many testimonies to his kind personal qualities and his career achievements will have been of comfort to them. I send the Labour Party's condolences to Brian's wife Miriam, his children Cleona, Connor, Eugene, Brian and Gavin, and to his wider family. And if I might just address the grandchildren who are here present listening to these statements, I hope you never forget this day, the day that you were in Leinster House in Dáil, listening to people of the Oireachtas speaking so kindly and so warmly about your grandfather. He served this country to the best of his abilities, and that's a great testament to him and to your family.
Thank you very much, Deputy O'Riordan. Deputy Padder Tobin, on behalf of the regional group.
Gur míle mágad a ceann cóirle agus bhhail mo cóhrón a go bhfuil freisin mo hon agus son aontu agus son an grúpa réúnach don clán agus do cóide Brian Hillery, ba cailúnt ulmhór agus don clán go háirithe. I want to express my deepest sympathies and that of my party Aontu and that of the regional group to the family of Brian Hillery. People who knew Brian personally knew him as a gentleman, and a gentleman recognised by all sides in this chamber is a very unusual thing in many cases. It's very important to say that Brian excels in all the aspects of his life that he was involved in. He excels especially academically as a young man, and he also served as the first Professor of Industrial Relations at UCD, and as a TD and as a Senator here. Brian's expertise both in industrial relations and as an academic guided him through his career, and he proved a rock of sense and knowledge within the Seanad and within the Dáil. And despite significant internal party political pressures within Fianna Fáil, Brian stood up for what he believed in, and that too is an outstanding mark for his credibility as an elected representative. Brian worked with multiple public bodies, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, and as a director of the Central Bank in a lifetime of national service. And such a variety of high-level roles shows an intellect that's able to deal with all of those issues. And it's a very, very impressive intellect as well. And over the past, we've heard from the many friends of Brian in politics and in other fields. They reflect on the calm and stable voice that he was in those tumultuous times in politics. And they show Brian as a kind and decent man who served his constituency well. And I think it's a very, very impressive legacy that Brian leaves for his former party, for his constituency, his country, but most of all for his family. Because when we lose a loved one that we are very, very close to, we're left with a number of things. One is the memories that we have, but also the legacy that he leaves for us as we live our own lives. And I'd like to just say our deepest sympathies to all the members of Brian's family. Yesterday, go Anam English.
Micheál Magat Iachta Nish son on group Nias Bloch Tuche, Deputy Michael Collins, please.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Brian Hillery was widely regarded as one of the great gentlemen of Irish politics. Those who served with him in the Oireachtas have remarked of how Brian was always extremely courteous and a warm and intelligent man. However, those who spoke of his legacy after his passing spoke so fondly about his personal qualities as much as his achievements. Brian served as a senator from 1977 to 1982, 1983 to 1989 and 1992 to 1994, and took to Dáil TD for Dún Laoghaire constituency from 1989 to 1992. In signalling his strength of character, Brian opposed Charles Haughey during the three tempestuous heaves in the early 1980s, despite considerable pressure from constituency members to back the leader. Fianna Fáil was driven with dissension at the time, and tempers were frequently frayed. But Brian managed to remain on good terms with the different strands of the party while refusing to budge on his view that Charles Haughey should go. Outside the Senate chamber, his skills were in great demand, whether it was helping to bring about peace at the height of the industrial conflict at the ESB in the 1970s, bringing agreement on army pay in the 1990s, or dealing with hostilities between the larger shareholders in I&M in the 2000s. His calm and steady approach was vital in resolving seemingly intractable disputes. After a career in politics, he was appointed as Ireland and Denmark's representative on the board of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in London, 1994 to 1997. He was subsequently chairman of the Independent News and Media and of Providence Resource. He is survived by his wife Miriam, daughter Cleona, and sons Conor, Eugene, Brian and Gavin. On behalf of myself and my colleagues in the Rural Independent Group, we offer you all our heartfelt sympathies again today.
Very much, Deputy Collins. And now, from the constituency, Deputy Cormac Devlin.
Agat Ceann Comhairle, and I want to first and foremost welcome the Hillery family, particularly Brian's wife Miriam, to the Distinguished Visitors Gallery. The late Professor Brian Hillery served, as he rightly pointed out, as a TD for the constituency of Dún Laoghaire between 1989 and 1992. And it's wonderful to have so many of the Hillery family here today with us. Today is the 85th anniversary of Brian's birth. Brian James Hillery was born on the 22nd of November 1937 at the family home in Milltown Malbay in County Clare to a strong Fianna Fáil family. He attended school locally before going on to St Flannan's in Ennis for secondary education, and then taking a Bachelor of Commerce degree from University College Dublin. After graduation, he worked at the Agricultural Credit Corporation in Dublin before winning a Rotary Scholarship to the University of Georgia in 1965, where he earned his Masters in Business Administration. A distinguished academic, Brian joined the faculty in UCD in 1967, where he became the first Professor of Industrial Relations in 1974. He was called upon several times during that period to help mediate a number of disputes, of which, Ceann Comhairle, there were many. Widely published, he was visiting professor in the industrial relations at the University of California in Berkeley in spring 1977 and a guest lecturer at the University of Warwick and Wharton School. Brian married Miriam Davey in 1970. Miriam is the daughter of the distinguished Irish rugby player Eugene Davey. Together, Brian and Miriam had 5 children: Conor, Eugene, Cleena, Brian Patrick and Gavin, which I welcome as well, along with his sister Joan, brother Tommy, and all the extended Hillery family today to the Distinguished Gallery. Brian and Miriam celebrated their 50th golden wedding anniversary on the 18th of July in 2020. And as the Taoiseach has said, Miriam was a determined supporter and advisor to Brian, who travelled the country, ensuring his election to the Seanad in 1977 and 1983. While her support for Brian during his election to Dáil Éireann in 1987 to represent the constituency of Dún Laoghaire, alongside former Minister David Andrews in an exceptionally competitive and exciting campaign with former councillor and the Cearlach of the county at the time, Betty Coffey, which members still recall 35 years later. So it tells you how exciting that was. Brian was appointed by the Taoiseach Albert Reynolds to the Seanad in 1993, where he served until 1994, when he stepped down as a senator to take up appointment as Executive Director to the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, representing Ireland and Denmark until 1997. In latter years, he has had a distinguished business career, serving as a director of many public and private entities, while continuing his long history of public service as Director of the Central Bank and Financial Service Regulator, as well as Chairman of the Independent News and Media, which, it has to be said, Ceann Comhairle, his mediation skills were called upon yet again in that role. Speaking to colleagues who served with Brian here in the Oireachtas, they always remember him as a warm, intelligent and courteous parliamentarian, great company, and a man who had a distinguished contribution to his life. And on behalf of all the members of Fianna Fáil in Dún Laoghaire, I want to extend our deepest sympathy to the Hillery family. Arreste go raibh anam.
Can I just, on my own behalf, on behalf of all the members, extend deepest sympathy to the Hillery family. I didn't have the pleasure of serving with Professor Hillery, but I knew him by reputation, and because my family has, through my wife, very strong connections with Milltown Malbay, I knew him through family connections, and it was always a pleasure to meet him on his frequent visits here to Leinster House over the years. I think it will have to be said, as encapsulated in the remarks of other members, that he is someone, the breadth and depth of whose service to this country can meet few parallels. Those of us who knew him were fortunate to know him. Those of us who enjoyed the benefits of his endeavours are fortunate to have had him working on our behalf. Can we all now rise in our places for a minute's reflection, please? May the Lord rest his gentle soul.